The Caucasus is not a peripheral region. It is one of the world's great natural fortresses. Rising between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, the Caucasus stands at the intersection of Europe, Russia, the Middle East, and Central Asia. For thousands of years, this rugged mountain system has shaped borders, limited empires, and redirected the ambitions of great powers. Here, geography is not a backdrop. It is the main actor. Towering peaks, deep valleys, and narrow mountain passes have turned the Caucasus into a natural barrier between civilizations. Armies could cross it, but rarely control it. Traders could pass through, but only along routes dictated by the terrain. Empires could claim it on maps, yet struggle to dominate it on the ground. This is why the Caucasus has never been quiet. It is a zone of constant friction, where cultures overlap, identities endure, and power is contested again and again. From ancient empires to modern states, the same reality repeats itself. Whoever seeks influence in Eurasia must confront the Caucasus. Not because of politics alone, but because the land itself demands it. In this region, mountains decide borders. Valleys define loyalties. And geography sets the limits of power. To understand the Caucasus is to understand a simple truth. In some places, history follows the terrain. To understand why the Caucasus has always resisted control, we must start with its geography. This region spans roughly 440,000 square kilometers, yet within this relatively compact space lies one of the most complex terrains on Earth. It is shaped not by one mountain system, but by two. To the north rises the Greater Caucasus, a continuous wall of peaks stretching from the Black Sea to the Caspian Sea. Some mountains exceed 5,000 meters, forming a natural barrier that has limited movement for centuries. South of it lies the Lesser Caucasus, lower in altitude but far more fragmented. Here, ridges, valleys, and plateaus divide the land into isolated pockets, separating communities by terrain rather than uniting them under a single center. Climate intensifies this isolation. Harsh winters, heavy snowfall, and sudden weather shifts have historically restricted travel and communication. Geography does not merely slow movement here, it dictates it. This physical fragmentation produced human fragmentation. Today, more than 30 million people live across the Caucasus, belonging to over 50 ethnic groups and speaking dozens of languages from entirely different language families. In many areas, neighboring valleys do not share the same language, identity, or historical memory. Empires learned the same lesson repeatedly. They could control strategic routes, lowlands, and major passes. But the mountains themselves resisted authority. Control weakened with altitude, distance, and cultural difference. This is the fundamental rule of the Caucasus. Whoever controls the routes may claim the region, but never fully control its people. Here, geography does not create unity, it creates limits. If geography makes the Caucasus difficult to control, energy explains why so many powers still try. Azerbaijan occupies just 86,600 square kilometers, yet its position at the edge of the Caspian Sea gives it a strategic weight far greater than its size. Home to just over 10 million people, the country sits above one of the most important enclosed energy basins on Earth. The Caspian region holds billions of barrels of oil and vast reserves of natural gas. Azerbaijan alone accounts for roughly 7 billion barrels of proven oil reserves and more than 2 trillion cubic meters of gas. Today, energy represents nearly 90% of the country's exports and around half of its economy. This role is not new. By the late 19th century, Baku had already become a global energy hub. At its peak, the city produced more than half of the world's oil, decades before the Middle East emerged as the dominant supplier. Yet Azerbaijan's geography imposes strict limits. The Caspian Sea is rich but enclosed. With no direct access to open oceans, Azerbaijan depends on land corridors to move its energy outward. Pipelines replace sea lanes, and geography turns infrastructure into strategy. Projects like the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline stretch nearly 1,800 kilometers to reach the Mediterranean, deliberately bypassing regional powers. The Southern Gas Corridor connects the Caspian to Europe, making Azerbaijan not just a producer but a transit state. Baku reflects this reality. A modern capital built on energy flows, yet constrained by mountains to the west and a closed sea to the east. In the Caucasus, resources attract power, but geography decides how that power moves. Azerbaijan stands where oil, terrain, and geopolitics converge. Armenia is one of the oldest civilizations in Eurasia, yet one of the most constrained by geography. Situated in the Southern Caucasus, Armenia occupies just under 30,000 square kilometers and is home to around 3 million people. Unlike its neighbors, it has no access to the sea. Every connection to the outside world depends on land routes that cross contested terrain and sensitive borders. This isolation is not accidental. Armenia lies at the intersection of empires that have risen and fallen around it for millennia. Persians, Romans, Byzantines, Arabs, Ottomans, and Russians all passed through this land. Few ever fully controlled it. Armenian identity formed early and endured remarkably. Armenia was the first state to adopt Christianity as an official religion in the 4th century, anchoring its culture long before modern borders existed. Geography reinforced this continuity. Mountainous terrain protected communities, but also limited expansion and trade. At the center of Armenian historical memory stands Mount Ararat. Today, located just beyond Armenia's borders, the mountain remains a powerful national symbol. It represents both endurance and loss, a reminder that geography and politics do not always align. The defining rupture came in the early 20th century. During the collapse of empires and the redrawing of borders, Armenians experienced mass displacement and extermination. The Armenian genocide marked a permanent geopolitical break, transforming a historic civilization into a small, landlocked state surrounded by larger powers. This trauma reshaped Armenia's strategic reality. Security replaced expansion. Survival replaced ambition. Borders hardened, alliances narrowed, and geography became a constraint rather than a shield. Yerevan, Armenia's capital, reflects this condition. One of the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities, it sits in a vulnerable basin, close to borders that have shifted repeatedly. It is a capital shaped not by dominance, but by endurance. In the Caucasus, Armenia represents a different kind of power. Not control over routes, but persistence across centuries. Here, history does not disappear. It accumulates. And geography ensures that survival itself becomes a strategy. For Russia, the Caucasus is not a distant frontier. It is one of its most sensitive borders. The Russian Caucasus stretches along the northern slopes of the Greater Caucasus Mountains, forming a natural boundary between Russia and the volatile regions to the south. This area includes republics such as Chechnya, Dagestan, Ingushetia, Kabardino-Balkaria, Karachay-Cherkessia, and North Ossetia, Alania. Together, they represent some of the most ethnically diverse and politically complex territories within the Russian Federation. Historically, this region was never fully integrated by consent. During the expansion of the Russian Empire in the 19th century, the Caucasus became a zone of prolonged resistance. Mountain warfare, local uprisings, and deep cultural divisions made control costly and incomplete. Authority was imposed militarily, but rarely internalized. That pattern persisted into the Soviet era and beyond. After the collapse of the USSR, the Caucasus emerged as one of Russia's most unstable regions. Armed conflicts, separatist movements, and insurgencies revealed a fundamental tension. Moscow could enforce order, but struggled to secure loyalty. Nowhere is this clearer than in the North Caucasus. With a population of roughly 10 million people spread across dozens of ethnic groups and languages, the region remains fragmented by geography and identity. Mountainous terrain limits connectivity, while historical grievances continue to shape local politics. North Ossetia-Alania occupies a particularly strategic position. Sitting astride key mountain passes, it serves as a gateway between Russia and the South Caucasus. Control of this area is not symbolic, it is logistical. For Moscow, the Caucasus is a defensive buffer. It protects Russia's southern flank from instability spilling northward from the Middle East and Central Asia. It also secures access to the Black Sea and Caspian regions, linking Russia to energy corridors and strategic routes. Yet this importance comes at a cost. Maintaining control requires a constant military presence, heavy security infrastructure, and centralized authority. Cultural integration remains limited. This is the paradox of Russia's Caucasus. It is strategically indispensable, yet permanently fragile. Here, Russia controls territory but never entirely the terrain of identity. And that makes the Caucasus not just a border, but a pressure point in Russia's geopolitical architecture. Georgia, the nation at the crossroads. Georgia is not merely a country of the Caucasus, it is a historical hinge between worlds. Positioned between the Black Sea and the mountains of the Greater Caucasus, it has for centuries been the point where Europe, Eurasia, and the Middle East meet, trade, and collide. Its geography makes it an unavoidable passage, its history, a contested land. Since antiquity, Georgia has served as a corridor between empires, Persian, Ottoman, and Russian. Yet unlike other transit spaces, it never dissolved into its surroundings. It forged a distinct identity, deeply Christian, linguistically unique, and culturally resilient. That identity, however, has always existed under pressure. Tbilisi, its capital, is the perfect reflection of this condition. It is not merely an administrative center, but a cultural and political node where European architecture coexists with Persian and Soviet legacies. Here, Georgia conceives of itself as part of Europe, even while anchored in Eurasia. This tension defines its foreign policy, looking westward while unable to escape its neighborhood. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Georgia sought to break definitively from Russia's orbit. Moscow responded not through direct occupation, but through a more subtle and enduring strategy: territorial fragmentation. The regions of Abkhazia and South Ossetia became instruments of permanent pressure. Frozen conflicts, Russian military presence, and partial recognition, enough to weaken the Georgian state without the need for total control. Russia understands that Georgia does not need to be conquered, it only needs to be unstable. A fractured bridge state loses its value as an energy corridor, as a European partner, and as an example for other post-Soviet spaces. Georgia remains in a precarious balance. Between Europe and Eurasia, between sovereignty and external pressure, between openness and vulnerability. In the Caucasus, controlling routes is possible. Controlling its peoples has never been. Turkey, Eastern Anatolia, the southern approach. The Caucasus does not end in its mountains. It extends southward, fading into the plateaus and valleys of Eastern Anatolia, where geography ignores modern political borders. Turkey is not an external actor to the Caucasus. It is its natural extension, its southern access point, and in many ways its guardian. Since antiquity, Eastern Anatolia has functioned as a transitional zone between the Caucasian world, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean. Trade routes, imperial campaigns, and migrations converged here, linking the Black Sea to Mesopotamia. Persian, Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman empires all understood the same strategic truth. Whoever controls Eastern Anatolia controls the southern approaches to the Caucasus. The Black Sea reinforces this logic. It is not merely a maritime basin, but a strategic system connecting ports, energy corridors, and spheres of influence. Turkey, with its northern coastline and control of the straits, acts as a maritime hinge between Eastern Europe, the Caucasus, and the Mediterranean. From this position, Ankara projects power without the need to occupy Caucasian territory. Historically, the Ottoman Empire integrated Anatolia and the Southern Caucasus into a single political and cultural space. Today, the Republic of Turkey reproduces that continuity through modern means: trade, infrastructure, energy, and strategic diplomacy. Its presence in Azerbaijan, its influence in the Black Sea, and its military weight in eastern Anatolia make it a structural actor, not a circumstantial one. Beyond borders, there are human and cultural continuities: Turkic, Kurdish, and Caucasian peoples who share memories, routes, and mountains. This informal network strengthens Turkey's strategic depth. Turkey understands the Caucasus not as a frontier, but as a prolongation. Its strategy is not to dominate the mountainous core, but to secure access points, control flows, and keep the southern gate open. In a region where brute force rarely suffices, geography remains the true architect of power. When the Caucasus is discussed, Iran is often left out of the frame. Yet south of the Caspian Sea lies a continuous space where modern borders conceal a deeper reality: the fusion of Iran, Iranian Azerbaijan, and the Caspian. Here, the Caucasus does not end, it transforms. Millions of Azerbaijanis live within Iran, particularly in the northwestern provinces. They are not a marginal minority, but a community historically integrated into the Iranian state. Their daily life preserves ancient pastoral traditions: sheep herding, seasonal transhumance, and a rural economy that follows the rhythms of mountains and steppe. Language, music, and customs connect them more closely to the Caucasian world than to Central Persia, yet their political loyalty has generally remained stable. For Iran, this region represents strategic depth. Controlling the southern Caspian means safeguarding internal routes, securing resources, and maintaining influence in the Caucasus without direct exposure. Unlike other actors, Tehran does not seek visible protagonism. Its method is silent continuity: economic networks, cultural ties, and a constant state presence. The Caspian Sea is central to this equation. It is not merely a shared body of water, but a source of wealth. Beyond hydrocarbons, the southern Caspian contains significant salt deposits, exploited since antiquity for food preservation, trade, and industrial use. These mines sustain local economies and reinforce regional self-sufficiency. Iran views the Caspian as a shared space rather than a rigid frontier. Its influence does not manifest through military bases or open conflict, but through stability, internal territorial control, and strategic patience. While others compete for visibility, Iran consolidates its presence. In the expanded Caucasus, power does not always shout. Sometimes, it simply endures. The Caucasus is not just a region. It is a reminder that geography still shapes power. Wedged between empires, seas, and civilizations, it has never been fully absorbed by any single force. Instead, it endures as a permanent zone of friction, where control is always contested and never complete. Mountains dominate the Caucasus not only physically but politically. They fracture territory, isolate communities, and protect identities. Valleys become homelands, passes become choke points. This terrain has allowed regions, cultures, and peoples to resist total domination, whether by imperial armies, modern states, or ideological projects. Authority here is layered, negotiated, and often fragile. The Caucasus is also a mosaic of cultures and loyalties. Languages, religions, and traditions overlap in compressed space, creating resilience but also tension. Borders rarely align with identities, and attempts to impose rigid control have repeatedly produced instability rather than order. In this landscape, power can be asserted, but rarely secured. In a multipolar world, the Caucasus is gaining renewed importance. It sits astride energy corridors linking the Caspian to Europe, trade routes connecting Asia to the Black Sea, and strategic frontiers between NATO, Russia, Iran, and regional powers. Its relevance is no longer regional, it is systemic. Beneath its mountains lie valuable resources: oil, gas, minerals, water, and transit routes. These assets bring investment and attention, but also rivalry and conflict. Competing interests overlap in a confined space, turning economic opportunity into geopolitical stress. The richness of the region is precisely what makes it volatile. History shows a consistent pattern. Empires enter the Caucasus seeking permanence and leave behind fragmentation. Control can be imposed temporarily, influence can be expanded, but ownership remains elusive. The Caucasus does not belong to anyone in full, and that is precisely why it matters. Can a region shaped by geography rather than by states ever truly be controlled? Or is the Caucasus destined to remain a permanent zone of friction between rival powers? In an increasingly multipolar world, where energy corridors and strategic routes redefine power, will the Caucasus become a bridge of integration, or continue as a landscape of competition and fragmentation? Thank you for joining us on this journey. Leave your reflections below, subscribe to the Geography channel for more geopolitical explorations, and share this video to expand the discussion. See you next time in our ongoing journey through history, power, and place.